one of our wonderful Breitbart journalists focused on the board of the Cartel Chronicles. Ildefonso, how are you, sir?
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Mike.
It's great to talk to you. I was looking up your name, Ildefonso. Does it mean battle ready?
Actually, yes, it does. That's actually the meaning of it, yeah.
That is pretty good. That is pretty cool. Battle ready. I mean, if I had another kid, maybe I'd just call him that. Battle ready Slater. Oh, it's the English American version of Ildefonso. Battle ready. Pretty cool. We got to talk about Biden's new executive order, but first, the reason I first asked you on is to give us some insight in the new president of Mexico. Who is this woman? What do we need to know about her? Because all the lamestream is talking about is how she broke the glass ceiling. But who is she?
Well, her name is Claudia Sheinbaum, and actually, I mean, yes, she's the first woman president of Mexico, but so was the opposition candidate. So either way, there would have been a woman elected.
Now, interesting. Okay.
Now, she was handpicked by López Obrador, who's the current president, basically because she was her personal yes person. Basically, she was the governor of Mexico City beforehand, and she pretty much did everything to AMLO asked for, and that was the reason why she was picked for. So basically, she's not. There's theories that she's going to be basically AMLO's second term in office. She's basically going to be covering for him, helping, basically continuing what he started. So relations with Mexico are going to be rocky. Mexico has been getting closer to China and Russia than they have been to the U.S. Border issues will continue, and cartel violence will continue to escalate. So it's a scary scenario for what's ahead for Mexico.
You said something there that is quite scary, that Mexico's relationship is getting closer with China than us. What does that mean?
Well, since AMLO came into power, one of the things he started doing was basically leveraging Russia and China versus the U.S. So when they wanted something, they needed funding, they needed whatever, they would basically, if the U.S., the U.S. embassy wouldn't give it to them, or the U.S. government, they would basically start going to China and Russia. And it's kind of funny because in Mexico City, the number of Russian diplomats and Chinese diplomats has tripled since AMLO took office. Their embassies are booming. They probably have more people than the U.S. embassy does at this point. And all this happened during AMLO's term. And actually, Russia and China have been actually playing a big role in certain infrastructure projects that Mexico has been developing and will be developing in the next few years.
What is her connection/relationship to the cartels?
Well, here's where it gets kind of tricky because pretty much it's interesting, but really the cartels get their true power from Mexico's government. It's just the widespread corruption from the lowest level all the way to the president's office that has allowed them to become so powerful for so long. In this particular case, basically she's AMLO's, she's following AMLO's suit. So AMLO has been actually not really touching any of the cartels. AMLO has basically, since he took office, he basically tied up the hands of the DEA agents in Mexico. He denied visas. He basically changed the law of how they could operate in Mexico. So he made it very difficult. And the reason for this was this. Before AMLO came into office, the DEA agents were constantly tracking Mexican high-ranking officials that were working for the cartels. We have to remember that, the General Cienfuegos case, we're talking about the former Secretary of Defense in Mexico who was accusing the U.S. of having worked with drug cartels. So we're talking people at the highest levels. So what AMLO did was made it almost impossible for the U.S. to go after Mexican officials for working with cartels. So now what Mexico has also done is they really haven't gone after any major cartel hitters. The Sinaloa cartel has been booming under the AMLO administration. Cartel Jalisco has grown exponentially as well. Even some of the smaller cartels have actually had protection from the government officials. In Tamaulipas, the Gulf cartel has been actively getting protection from the Tamaulipas government. So sadly, the scenario is scary. This is expected to continue under her term. So we're having a fentanyl crisis right now. Just wait to see what's happening in the next 6 years.
I think about 4 minutes. One last question on her. I asked this because Kim Jong-un is the leader of North Korea. Apparently, his sister is like way more hardcore than he is, right? So is this new president of Mexico? You say she's just like kind of did everything that the current president did. Is she like a weaker version of it? And like Trump will roll her when he's president, or is she like actually a more wicked, like on it, capable, more fierce version of the current president?
She seems to be a weaker version of AMLO that will basically do whatever AMLO says. Now, one thing to remember is that when Trump was in office, AMLO was scared of Trump. Remember when he threatened the tariffs, and then AMLO basically did everything to stop the migrants, and AMLO was actually working with the U.S., which is something that dramatically changed as soon as Biden came into office. There was a huge difference in how Mexico worked with the U.S. embassy and how Mexico worked with the U.S. government. It was a night and day. So when Trump comes into power, I mean, that may be a benefit, but at this point, who knows? Just because Russia and China have had 4 years to get closer to Mexico, while the U.S. is barely right now trying to get something going with Mexico. I mean, just look at the way AMLO played the Biden administration on the immigration crisis. Basically, they used them sort of as a negotiation tool to get more funding for Mexico. And once the U.S. agreed to give them more funding, then AMLO is trying to stop some of the migrants from reaching the border. But still, we're still at record-setting numbers.
Yeah, which leads us to this executive order that we've already punched all the holes through. Like we know the loopholes already, right? But what's your analysis on this new crackdown on the border from Joe Biden?
Well, this new order, it really won't make any change. Now, it has too many holes in the way it's written. For example, the issue about the unaccompanied minors, and people are being able to claim that if you still have credible fear, we'll still take you in. So it really doesn't change anything. It just looks good on paper, and it's one of those where it's like they're doing this now just because the elections are just right around the corner. There's really no real meat to what they're doing now that they couldn't have done in the past.
Neil Cavuto asked Mayorkas about that unaccompanied minor, and he said, wouldn't the cartels just take advantage of that and just right? So what would the cartels do with this unaccompanied minor loophole?
Well, it's one thing that they did a couple of years ago. Basically, they actually had a system where they would have kids. They would, if you were, say you were a migrant in Matamoros trying to get to the U.S., they would give you a kid and be like, okay, you're going to claim him as your son. And since a lot of these people don't have computer records from their home country, so that there's no way for a government to confirm that he is in fact your son. So then you cross, you get processed, you guys get released. Then you put that kid back in a bus and you send it back. That kid crosses back into Mexico to the human smuggling organization. Then they give him to another person. They were basically doing, sort of like the human smugglers were basically using kids and basically recycling them, and they were crossing the border multiple times.
Yeah, amazing. Ildefonso Ortiz, one of our Breitbart Cartel Chronicle writers, and all over Breitbart.com, all the latest with what's going on in Mexico and the cartels. Ildefonso, battle ready. Great to talk to you, sir. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks.